We are here today to talk about ideas, and talk about ideas that can help us as an industry be better, work safer, and actually hopefully be more efficient. So I've actually got somebody joining me on stage now, which I'm very excited to have with me, is Samer Chocair from CE Creates. And he's part of a group which is forming ION, which is the region's first sustainable transport. So if you'd like to just give me a round of applause to introduce Samer to the stage. Thank you.
How are you?
Thank you. Good to see you.
You too.
Great to share with our audience today exactly what is ION and what makes it the region's first sustainable transporter.
Sure. Well, yeah, about 2 years ago, we started thinking about building a sustainable transportation business. So let me give you a bit of a background of who we are. Cressa Enterprises is a privately owned conglomerate based out of Sharjah. We are in various sectors, including ports and logistics. We have EPC construction. We have some aviation investments. And about 10 years ago, the group decided or made the conscious decision to start investing in the sustainability space and having sustainability become part of the ethos of the group. And as such, we built various platforms that invest in different stages of businesses. And one of them is called CE Creates, which is very early stage incubation of new concepts. Yeah. And part of that platform, which I had, is ION, which was an idea of creating a sustainable transportation business that we can roll out across the region. Now, we took a strategic decision to partner with BIA. So BIA,
it's a good choice, really.
Absolutely. I mean, they're
in terms of sustainability.
And today they see themselves more of a sustainable living business rather than a waste management.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So ION came about with the idea of us as the private sector investing in and operating sustainable transportation as a solution that we can provide and make accessible to the masses. Today, as you probably know, 30% of global CO2 emissions come from the transportation sector. So this needs to be tackled, immediately.
Yeah.
And that's how ION came about. We want to make electric vehicles and sustainable transportation accessible to the public rather than keeping it as a niche kind of space.
Yeah. And obviously, since we've spoken, you've undergone pilot trials, and obviously there's been a lot of progress made within the organization since then. So it'd be great to actually get an idea exactly what you've learned in that period.
So when we first started, we were looking at what spaces or what industries in specific to look at. And ride-hailing made sense at the time. It's a fairly big market. It's at about $180 billion market last year, growing to about 320 in over the next 3 years.
Wow.
In our region alone, in the UAE alone, actually, it's at about $3 billion, going to about $7 billion in 3 years. Dollars, yeah.
Wow.
So this is a space that we thought would be a good entry point. It gives us access to the masses as part of our target market. The idea of making sustainable transportation accessible to everyone at a affordable price, and making it an easy choice for people to decide to go with sustainable transportation rather than ICE engines. So the learnings have been immense, to say the least. Everything from...
It's all gone smoothly, hasn't it? It's gone absolutely smoothly all the way through.
Yeah, I mean, you think it's a car. A car is a car, right?
Yeah.
But it absolutely isn't. Everything from the way you maintain those vehicles to the way you drive them. Even our drivers had to go through a major shift in the way they treat that vehicle and the way they drive it, and the way they generally deal with it.
I'm sure there's lots of people in this audience that could probably relate to that
Absolutely,
situation.
absolutely. And it's very different when it's personal use versus fleet. I mean,
Yeah.
fleet, you're running that vehicle down to, you know,
Yeah.
to the bone. For commercial use, you need to really understand every little twist in that vehicle. So from a technical perspective, we went through a lot. From a regulatory perspective as well, we've been working closely with all the regulators across the UAE to make electric vehicles, commercial electric vehicles, more viable.
Yeah.
You know, today our Teslas compete with the Lexus, which is less than half the price.
Yeah.
Yet we're charging the same fees. So from a business viability perspective, it's also quite challenging. But we've found ways to work around that.
So you mentioned sort of working with the regulatory bodies. So is that do you think they're looking to you to in this partnership actually in terms of actually sort of shape how other organisations like yourselves or just generally just the public are going to be using these vehicles and how these vehicles are going to fit into our roads?
In the region, we're very used to having government do this work for us.
Yeah.
Right. We're an oil-rich region, and therefore we expect government to do everything, and we just kind of chill and ride the wave. I think those days are long gone. We're at a point where the private sector needs to contribute.
Yeah.
We're at an inflection point. We have a major crisis at our hands of global warming and climate change that people don't seem to take seriously enough. And we cannot rely on governments to do this for us. So I think we need to do something about this. And we, as you know, as the private sector, we're trying to pave the way for others to see that this could be done, this could be viable. There is money to be made even in doing good.
Yeah.
Our mandate as a platform, CE Creates, is do good while also doing well.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea is sustainable business and profitability are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So this is a commercial operation in the truest form.
Absolutely.
And just obviously you're, let's say, at the leading edge, cutting edge in terms of what is there in terms of what works in the market in terms of electric vehicles, and obviously BIA are committed to buying Tesla semis, and that was quite publicly known last year. And so is there any advice you could pass on to anybody in the audience here about what you're learning and about these vehicles in terms of, you know, how they prepare for this future and on whatever time scale it's going to come? Is there any advice you can pass on in terms of the use of electric vehicles?
I mean, it's going to happen whether you like it or not, right? So it's a matter of whether you be ahead of the curve, ride the curve, or be left behind. I think, look, I started off by saying they're quite different, but obviously they're still vehicles that humans can drive. So I think the big shift to be getting ready for, and that's how we positioned ourselves with getting into ION, is ultimately getting into the autonomous driving space. So I think from a business perspective, what people need to prepare themselves for is not necessarily the technology itself and how to deal with it, as much as it is the impact this technology is going to have on the economy and on the space that we're in. You know, imagine 10, 20 years from now, truck drivers will no longer be needed, right? Cab drivers and car drivers will no longer be needed. That's going to have a massive impact on economy in general, as drivers make up a big part of the workforce today. So we cannot continue denying the fact that it's happening. It is going to happen. There's no need to oppose it or fight it. Technology is advancing at light speed. I think we're even about to announce autonomous vehicle fleet that will start running in the next couple of months in the UAE. So there's
cars.
Well, shuttles, let's say. Yeah, but cars are coming as well. So we're looking at piloting a couple of cars as well in the coming few months. So it's happening. I think from a technology perspective, you can get used to it and you can learn how to deal with it fairly quickly. Infrastructure is lagging in some space, in some areas. So Dubai, for example, is quite advanced. There's somewhere in the vicinity of 300 charge points in Dubai. However, in Abu Dhabi and Sharjah, there still needs to be development in that space. So I think as the infrastructure develops, there's no reason anymore, and the prices of the technology and the vehicles goes down, there's no reason for anyone not to adopt this.
Are there any other ways you think, I mean, you sort of mentioned installing charging stations, making sure they're available, and the lowering costs. Are there any other ways that we should be looking to encourage the use of electric vehicles in the market? Is there, I mean, obviously look in Europe, they have sort of taxation incentives.
Absolutely.
Easy here.
So you have incentives, and you have the carrots and you have the sticks. Actually. In some cities, they've banned ICE vehicles and over weekends, for example, or in certain areas of the city. I don't think we need to go to that extent, but I do believe we need incentives. Because today, especially in our region or in the GCC in particular, electric vehicles are still quite expensive. When you go to parts of Europe or in the US, you get subsidies that make these vehicles at par with ICE vehicles. Today here, we're talking about double the price. So from a private investor's perspective, it's not, it doesn't seem as exciting right now. So we could do with a bit of support on that front, especially for fleet operations. For example, you can do with some incentives on the licensing fees, there's certain permits for limousines and taxis and so on. I believe with a bit of support there from regulators, we will see a lot more adoption from the private sector.
So it'd be good to know if you, sort of in terms of your future sort of strategy, sort of where you see the company in sort of 5, 6, 10 years.
Well,
do you have those conversations every day? Or?
Absolutely. We actually had this conversation on day one before we bought our first car. Where do we see ourselves? The idea is to our ultimate goals are to reduce the number of vehicles on the road and reduce CO2 emissions, right? We want the masses, and not just the privileged few, but we want the masses to be able to make the choice of taking a ride in a sustainable vehicle. And it's affordable, comfortable, and does not produce CO2.
Great.
That's the idea.
Perfect.
So across the board, from cars to shuttles to trains to flying vehicles, whatever it takes.
What's your office like? Is it sort of just a normal standard office? Or you
well, at the moment it is.
Loads of charging stations?
Well, at the moment it is, but we're actually... It's funny you asked that question. I was just yesterday, we're looking at designs of our new office. Again, office.
Because you want to look like your future facing, don't you?
Not at the moment, but we will. And if you saw BIA's upcoming headquarters is
it's
out
incredible.
of this world.
It's incredible.
It's,
Just one more question, because would it be fair to describe your organisation or ION to say as a disruptor? Is that this phrase that gets bandied around? I'm sure we'll probably talk about it a little bit today, in other panels. But do you see yourself as a disruptor or an enabler?
No, I think I don't like the term disruptor, because when you're disrupting, you're actually destroying another industry. I don't think we are. I think we're adapting. We're bringing the future forward. And we're doing what's absolutely necessary. Again, 30% of CO2 emissions today come from transportation. The IPCC recommends that we cut our emissions by 45% over the next 10 years. So that's not a joke, right?
There's a lot of work to be done.
There's a lot of work to be done. And we can't sit back and expect others to do it for us. It comes down to each and every individual to do their part.
Great, perfect. Samer, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Just like to applause. Thank you.
Thanks.
Wonderful.